Not on the dock, but away from the dock. Look at that, guys. You know what that fish bit? Hard to believe. A boot tail swim bait. It is unbelievable to me how potentially like the #1 selling soft plastic has gone from like dominating sales to basically being non-existent with the straight tail minnow popping up there. Just wild to me how it's been completely forgotten about. And I know there's still some people using it, but I've talked to a lot of people that are in the fishing industry that are just saying that straight tail or boot tail swim bait sales are down dramatically, and that's because so many people are going to the straight tail minnows. And it's not just boot tail swim baits, actually. It's pretty much everything, honestly. Wild to me how proven fish catchers just kind of get putting down over time. You know, when the newer and cooler things come out, everyone has to try it and has to find out what the hottest trends are. And the reality is, baits that have really been proven and, you know, have withstood the test of time are just, they should not go anywhere. You should continue to throw them. And the boot tail swim bait, in my eyes, I mean, there is no reason not to be throwing one. I still think it's potentially the #1 game fish bait made, whether you're talking, you know, for crappie and perch all the way up to bass, walleye, muskie. I mean, every game fish out there will eat a boot tail swim bait. And I would say it was thrown less this year than it's probably been thrown in the last 10 years, which I'm okay with, guys. Like, I am more than happy to be the only one on the lake throwing it, because as you just saw, it absolutely still catches fish. And it's just a great bait. And it doesn't matter, like I said, if you're throwing little ones or big ones, it generates strikes. And it's just funny how, I mean, you know, a crankbait. Who throws a crankbait anymore? Like, that's another one that it feels like people have just put down. And man, I mean, a crankbait, I actually feel like a crankbait, before forward-facing sonar coming, a crankbait was on the verge of being like the most mainstream bait out there. You know, especially, I was just having this conversation with Johnny Schultz the other day about how, like, speed cranking was like, from a pro standpoint, that was such a on the verge of becoming like a big mainstream thing. And then all of a sudden forward-facing came and people started putting down the old crankbaits, because crankbaits are hard to control from a depth standpoint. You know, it's hard to maintain the depth that you want. It always wants to dive. And if you're looking at fish and you want your bait above them, crankbait's not a great bait for that. But it doesn't mean crankbait doesn't catch bass anymore. Just like it doesn't mean a swim bait doesn't catch fish anymore. You know, it's funny how, like, every company out there, it was a race to get the newest and coolest boot tail swim bait. And the reality was, it's a boot tail swim bait. There's not a whole lot you can do to change that. This was actually one that was kind of introduced right at the tail end of it. This is the Raid Full Swing. This is a really good one, especially if you like throwing our core tackle tush, because it's a solid bait. It doesn't have, you know, a big slot where the weight can push through it, but it works phenomenally well on our tushes, on the core tackle tushes. And I feel like had the Raid Full Swing come out 2 years earlier, it would be a really popular boot tail swim bait. But because it came out right at the beginning of the straight tail minnow craze, I don't think there's that many people throw it. I'd be surprised, I guess, even though I really, really like it. Just something to think about. You know, don't, just because there's a new bait that comes out, a new craze, doesn't mean you gotta get rid of everything or stop using everything. What I like to do, I mean, and I'm guilty of this, guys. I buy everything because I want to try it. I want to find out what I think is, you know, could potentially be the next big bait for me. So I try it all, but I don't just put everything aside. Generally what I do is I'll rig up one rod with that new bait and I'll work it into the mix, but I really like to throw the stuff that I have complete confidence in to determine how good that new bait is. Because if I go out and only throw the new bait and I catch 10 fish, I might be really impressed with it. But if I didn't throw anything else that day, I have nothing to compare it to. So I like to really like rotate rods, rotate baits. And you know what? Maybe that day I went out and I caught 10 on the new bait, but I caught 25 in the same amount of time on a boot-tail swim bait. So is that telling me that that new bait is as good as a boot-tail? It might be telling me, yeah, it catches fish, but I need to figure out if it is truly a better fish catching bait than the other baits I was throwing on that day. And I think a lot of times what happens is an angler goes out, picks up that new bait, catches a couple fish on it, and they get some confidence in it, which is great, but they never really compared it to anything else. They never really threw anything else to have that comparison, and that's could potentially do more damage to them than good, because they're sitting there thinking this new bait is great, and in reality it may not have actually performed as good as something that has been around for 30 years would have performed on that day. So in my mind, it's always important to have a handful of rods. It's always important to rotate. It's always important to figure out each bait's prime time and prime use. You know, maybe you have a bait on your deck, you make 5 casts a day with it, but those 5 casts are the casts that you feel is when that bait absolutely shines. Like, that's the key, in my opinion, to really being a good angler, is understanding when and where to know when to throw what bait, and just know when that bait excels, because that's something that a lot of people don't do. They grab one bait and they stick with it. Anyways, guys, I just wanted to give you that public service announcement. There's another one. Public service announcement that boot-tail swim baits, he's coming. Oh, it just pulled off. Boot-tail, I couldn't catch up with that fish. Dang it. Boot-tail swim baits are still good, as well as most other baits that have been proven and around forever. Dang it, I never saw that fish. I could not keep up with him. Okay, anyways, guys, I think you see it still works. And we're sitting here in 40-some degree water, still catching them. Okay, guys, if you agree with me, let me know. If you think I'm crazy, let me know. And if you enjoy my channel, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, because there's a lot of you guys watching that are not subscribed to my channel, and I'd love to have you join the team. And if you're interested in some core tackle tush swim bait hooks or the Raid Full Swing, I'll put links in the video description so that you can check those out too. And all right, guys, I'm gonna get back to this, catching some bass on a boot tail swim bait. I'll see you tomorrow.